I wasn't happy with the way that the dovetail Japanese saw was cutting because it wouldn't cut fast enough. So I tried using a 10 inch saw. It's got 14 teeth per inch, which should cut faster, but I don't know if the offset is that great, and I don't really know how sharp it is. When I did that, I didn't get the best results. You may not be able to see it on camera, but it wasn't like perfect angles, and it did kind of cut at like a rounded type thing. And the thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to get stuck into the world of having to use a chisel to try to straighten out angles, because it can get disastrous. I think I got lucky. I'm still not happy with everything. I didn't chisel very well, but these are mistakes. It's handwork or hand woodworking. So it's all right. We'll see how it looks when it's all done, and we'll try to fix what we can as we go along. But let's move on to the pins. I got a little ahead of myself. I didn't show you the pin board that I did do for the first one that we had started, which was this one here, which is the D. And I went ahead and I cut out the A to at least show you what we're doing for this one. So I put the tape back on, as you can see here. So what we're doing is the tape runs parallel to both the shoulders, across the centers, and then that's going to butt up against the pin board here, and hopefully it'll stop it, and it'll be a good stop for there, and we'll be able to align it well. So I'm going to move the camera over so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So I've already cut these 3 lines right here. I'm gonna turn this around in order to cut the other ones, because there's a certain direction I do like cutting, so it makes it a little easier on me. We'll just flip that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat it on this side here. So the Japanese saw is nice because it's got a very thin kerf, and it's basically the same width of that pencil line that we have there, which is very nice, and it makes a very fine cut. The problem with it is I have to make a couple dozen strokes just to get down to this line, and so that gives me more chance of error as I'm cutting. So I need to be able to get down to that line as quickly as possible, which, as mentioned before, I'm waiting for my dovetail saw to come in. But we'll go ahead and we'll cut down this first one, and you'll see what I'm talking about. All I have to do is put it on that line just to the side of the scrap. So I'm going to bring it to this side of the line, and then I'm just going to saw just straight down to there. If I stayed on this line, because this line right here is carried down from this one straight down, I should be able to cut it straight. And off we go. Past the line, and we're good on there too. So you can see that cut very well. So we're straight on down from there. So now we just need to do these other 3, and we're done cutting down to the line. Then we need to cut the waist out. All right. So my very first time that I was cutting these out, like when I very first started cutting dovetails, like I said, I've only done it maybe a handful of times. I ended up cutting the pins out. When it came time to using coping, I had a coping saw at the time. Coping saw, fret saw is just a little bit easier to use and maneuver. So the trick is now is on this side of the board, you can see that these 2 points are more narrow than these ones. So we're going to put the blade down, and we're going to come down, and we're going to start turning it. And as we turn it, we're going to cut across the bottom of it, right across this line right here, all the way to the end. But we got to make sure that we don't cut into the face part over here, because it is more narrow. So that's why I've put the the more narrow side toward me so I can see it when I'm cutting. And I know that if I've cut to this point, I'm not going to be cutting into this pin here. So let's go ahead and get started on this. The other thing you don't want to do is, obviously you got the face side on yours. I don't want to cut below this line. So there's going to be some material that we're still going to have to chisel out. So we're not trying to cut on that. I'm not trying to cut on this line. I'm trying to cut above it, and we'll remove that excess with a chisel. Get to the end, you probably could hear the difference in the sound. It's getting a little bit lower, so this pin is ready, or this tail is ready to come out. I don't want to cut into the pins on either side, so let's stop it right. And a little bit more. There we go. Okay, it's that simple. And then we'll do the other two pins. Now we're on to chiseling. So we need to remove the rest of this material down to the line. And you know, I was a little bit paranoid when I was doing it, so I didn't cut as close to the line as I possibly could. Maybe as I improve my skills, maybe I will. But I didn't want to get hung up on that. So all I'm doing is I just have a sled here. If I need to, I can balance it against the edges. But just a scrap piece of wood, doesn't really matter whether it's plywood or anything. So I'm going to probably take down as much, like half of the material, half of the width as I go along. I'm going to start on the inside as I go. The reason for that is if I'll chop down to, you know, roughly half of the material here, flip it over, and I'll chop down the rest of the way. And if I chop down the rest of the way here, if I get any blowout or tear out, it'll be on the inside, which won't be seen. So we'll just plop it on there. You want to use the widest chisel that you got, and make sure it's very sharp. This is very, very sharp. The widest one I have is a 1-inch. So I'm gonna just half the material. And when you're doing this, make sure you're not too close to your marking gauge line, or your marking line, or marking gauge, same thing, yeah. So we're going to take out, like I said, we'll take out half of that. We'll work on taking out half of that. Okay. So you can see we still left the material here. Some of it's split out. I did go a little bit hard, but it's a pretty nice straight line. And we've come down as far as I want to go there. But now I can go ahead and put it in there, because I've removed a lot of good material. And the reason why I'm doing this is, if there's more material here, if I chop down, it's going to force the chisel into the wood. Now, yeah, this is the inside of the wood, but it doesn't mean you don't still practice the right technique. So I'll go ahead and start this one. Now, as I'm doing this one here, this pocket here, I kind of want a very little indent, not extreme, but just a little bit of one. And I will try to kind of guide it this way in order to follow the pin there, the pin, so that way it's kind of at the same kind of angle. Anyway, let's get started on this one here. Right into the line. Your chisel should follow that, should find that line really very well, should track it, and I'm straight onto that. Now it's just a matter of me kind of tilting it just a hair. And I'll do the same thing right here. You gotta get in that groove though. Now I'll go ahead and repeat them for these other ones, and then I'll flip it over and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. We've finished chiseling it out. I had a little bit of bruising. I went over, but obviously that won't be seen. But still, it's all about technique. It's because of this slope right here. When I was holding my chisel, I was holding it this way instead of holding it at an angle that follows that. So now that we've got that done, it's just a matter of cleaning some stuff up, any kind of loose debris that's left over that's going to interfere with the fit. This looks pretty good, actually. So I'm thinking, as long as this middle part is lower than the shoulders, or at least perfectly level with it, we're good. So we can check that by putting our square on it and making sure that it touches on both sides all the way across as we move it down, and they do. So I guess it's on to the fit. Let's see how it fits. This is the point in the process that this is your make or break. This tells you how well you actually sawed, how straight your lines are, etc., any kind of gaps. It's also the scariest part because the pins there's not a whole lot of material on. So as I'm trying to fit these two together, if there's any odd shapes, it could blow the pins out. So we'll pop it in the vise here, and we'll do a little rough fit. I'm not going to tighten it down too hard. So right off the bat, I can see where I've got some areas that need to be cleaned up a little bit. There's one here that's not quite all the way down. This is where it gets a little sketchy, because this is where my sawing wasn't as good, and I can actually feel that knife line, so I know that it's still there. So the technique that I'm going to do now, I can't say that I've seen anybody else do this, but I did it with my houndstooth half-blind dovetails, and it worked. So you do not want to come straight down on it. You do want to hold it at the right angle so that it's flush with the wood. But I'm going to be paring it. That's what this is, a paring chisel. It's also extremely sharp. So I'm going to put it into that knife wall, and then I'm just going to roll it up and just kind of peel that wood away. So let's just pop it right in there. Keep it parallel with that wall, and I'm just cutting it, just paring that right on down. Oh, I guess we should tighten this down a little bit, huh? So we just curled that right off. And we're going to just keep doing whatever we need for the fit. Let's see if that made it any better. There's probably a few more adjustments that would need to be made. It's close. So when I'm looking at this, I can see that I still need to take a little bit off of this one as well. Or is it this one? Let's say it's the pin. I don't want to take off much. Just enough. Okay, I kind of like that fit. We're good there. This wall here needs a little bit more work. This is what you don't want to be doing. If you sawed well and you transferred your lines well, you wouldn't be doing this at all. So I am not trying to promote this whatsoever, but I need to make this work. So this is the best way I know how. Aside from sawing better, I probably should take the tape off too. That's a little bit better. Let's take this tape off. I don't know that it's interfering at all, but it shouldn't be here nonetheless. I'm looking pretty good here, you know. Look at that. Look at that. So you can see where we have gaps. so it's not the best. I'm not the best at doing the dovetail. However, I got some music going on. Well, this is going to get glued together. I'm going to stop this while they're bumping there. All right. So the gaps don't look as bad as I was thinking they were going to. It's still a decent fit, and we're going to hand plane some of this down, and it'll hopefully fill up the gaps as well. But not bad, and not bad here. Like I said, we'll be hand gluing this together as well, so that'll make a difference there. And then it comes down to square. So now it's going to have to be square when it's all said and done, and that's pretty darn square. That is nice. So we'll finish up the rest of the joints, and we'll continue to practice our techniques as far as gaps go. Figure out where we went wrong. I know where we went wrong. It's the sawing technique, but I'll press on from there. Yeah. Good morning. We're up with the birds. It's early in the morning, but I wanted to get a good start. I've moved my bench now to the forefront of my garage, the opening. I kept getting overexposure with the lighting that I did have, fluorescent lights. You saw that in probably part one if you watched that one. So hopefully we'll have eliminated it here. Maybe even some better sound now. You got the wind probably coming in there, and obviously you can hear the birds, but that's the way I like to work. It's nice. All right. I wish my Rob Cosman saw would have come earlier. I did probably 95% of the tails and the pins using the Japanese dovetail saw. And it cuts fine. It cuts decently, but you saw in the little demonstration that I did, and you have to make that many cuts. Your blade can wander just a little bit, and with the Rob Cosman saw, I mean, it's kind of hands down, right? I mean, you saw it. It just like 2 or 3 strokes, and you're already to your line. So you cut a nice, crisp, straight line, which is what you need every single time. Now, yeah, I've only done a handful of dovetails, but it makes a world of difference. Right. So on to gluing these up. For the glue up, I'm going to use Matt Esley's method. He takes a couple blocks. If you look at his, I don't remember the exact title, but it's the Dovetail Box Project, something like that. There's, I don't know, like 12 different episodes of it. But in that, he makes these little blocks that when you put them onto the when you put them on the corners, you can clamp down your project better because of the tails and the pins. If you were to if you didn't use anything other than the clamps, you're not going to get an effective clamp. So there's that way, and then to make sure that your box is square to itself, just square to itself, I guess you'd say. He uses a stick that's cut in half, and then he puts them up together and he marks those off. If you've ever seen that video, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, and you're making a dovetail box, I encourage you to watch that. So we're going to press on with that. I'm going to cut this in half. I'm going to make a couple points. We're going to do a dry fit just to make sure that it will close together properly, and then we'll make sure that we're able to orient it the right way, and then we'll move on to the gluing. And while that's drying, I can move on to making the top for the box. All right. that's what you can achieve if you saw correctly. I would like to try to get make a bench saw. What do they call it? Saw bench? Saw bench. And then I don't have to flip it around and get this uneven cut here, but you can see if you take your time to cut, you can cut a pretty darn straight line. And that's, that's what I should be doing for all of my projects, and I will be doing going forward. Oops. All right, so we've done our dry fit. I want to check it for square. I can use my machinist square, and I see by using that we're already well squared. However, the method that Matt was talking about is if it's a skew, you'd be able to tell, one with using the square, and the other one is using this method, which is lining from corner to corner, and you put a pencil line across here, and you can see those are lined up. And then the same thing for this side, and we can see that they do line up, so we are square. So that's good, that's ready to go. And then I went ahead and purchased the Titebond 2, which I may have mentioned in the first video, but it is weatherproof because it is going in the ground and it's going to be exposed to the elements. And it's got a longer open time, which if you live in Arizona, you know is very important because you need some time to glue up your projects, and Arizona dries it out and starts curing the glue very fast. And lastly, we've made our rough jigs here, and those are to help us in the gluing portion of it. So I'm on to disassembling this, applying the glue. I'll spare you that process. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done, and then putting on our jigs there in order to clamp it down. And we'll make sure it's straight, and yeah, we're ready to go. I just can't win when it comes to recording equipment. Now I know that microphone, you're probably getting some kind of feedback. And we also have a little bit of a blustery day out today, and I don't know where my sock went for my microphone. So all kinds of fun stuff going on. All right, so went ahead and did our glue up. Those little dowel type things, whatever we would call them, jigs. I'll bring the camera over and show you how they work. But those I just held in place with some Gorilla Glue and some accelerant, and just put them on real quick. And that was it for those. Let me grab the camera and I'll show you what we got going on with those jigs. So let me zoom out a little bit. So you can see how they're just applying pressure to where they need to, all the way around. So those are clamped. We are square. I checked with the wooden sticks, and also the machinist square. You can see we're square all the way around. It's kind of difficult on one hand here, but it's square all the way around too. So we are set. I'll let that dry here for, well, I'll let it dry for the rest of the day at least. And we can get started on the top for it. I think that's about it for part 2. So the next one will be on part 3. As my woodworking always tends to go, as I'm in the middle of one part of the project, I think of trying something else as well. I have this ironwood here, which is, if you've never seen ironwood, it is a hard wood. You don't really work with it by hand. At least you won't plane it anyway. And I have this strip that I cut out. It's not, it's wider here than it is down here. I should say thicker than it is here. But I'm thinking I want to do inlay, and I want to use this and maybe make this into a diamond type pattern. It's just such a beautiful type of a wood. And then I'll do some other inlays that go with it, maybe smaller diamonds as well. I don't know. I'm gonna ponder it, but yeah, I'm thinking I might just do that.